How's it going, everybody? My name's Carpo, and I'd like to talk for a minute about why I don't like sports. I know that there are a lot of people out there who really love sports, and anytime I say, well, I just don't like sports, people say, how can you not like sports? So first I should start off by clarifying, it's not sports that I don't like. It is professional and college sports that I don't like. As far as a person playing a game, there's nothing wrong with that. I've played baseball. I've played football. I think it's a great way to get exercise and to develop a team atmosphere and a relationship. But that doesn't change the fact that professional sports are basically a complete scam. It's a way to get more and more money out of people, and the Olympics are the culmination of everything that's wrong with sports, in my opinion. Now, I haven't watched the Olympics in a long time because I do not support the Olympics at all in the way that they're laid out. They choose a city, they come in, they spend $50 billion, build structures that will be used like one time, and then they fall into disrepair and end up being a complete waste of money. And all of that money goes into the pockets of the people who promote it. This is exactly what happens with soccer, or as it's known, football in the rest of the world. The FIFA championships, completely disgusting. It's absolutely preposterous to me what they do to those towns. They move in, they kick people out of their homes, they find a nice area with a slum, and they will kick everybody out, destroy it, make a building, and then abandon it later. But I'd like to get down to a kind of a little more subtle, personal level on sports, and the kind of example that I have of why our country is so ass backwards when it comes to spending money. I wrote down the guy's name here. His name is Robert Morin, okay? Now, he worked for 50 years as a librarian. I believe it was I can't remember which university. I think it was New Hampshire, maybe. It was one of those. It's really irrelevant which university. The fact is, he was a librarian, and he had worked there for 50 years. He was a very strange fellow. Apparently, he read all the books that were written from 1930 to 1940. He'd read almost 2,000 books within his lifetime. He ate Fritos and Coke for breakfast, things like that. You know, he was just your average, what you might call a strange fellow. He kind of does his own thing, right? He lived very frugally, drove an old 92 Plymouth, and this guy saved all of his money. When he died recently, at 77 years old, after working there for 50 years, they found out that he had saved all his money. The whole time he'd worked there, he'd saved $4 million. And he had donated it to the school. Now, the only requirement he put in was that at least $100,000 of it be spent on the library where he worked. So the college decided to do just that, spend only $100,000 on the library. And then $2.5 million is supposed to go to some sort of a student thing, dorms, whatever. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. They took $1 million out of that and set it for a video scoreboard for their new sports stadium. Here's a man who spent his entire life working and donated money to a school, and they took a quarter of it and spent it on a video scoreboard for a $25 million stadium that they just got finished building. Now, there are kids out there who can't even afford an education, and sports are considered to be this priority in this country. It's ludicrous to me. I read, it was kind of a, debate.org, and I found this page where they were talking about, is sports a waste of money and time? And I read all of the positives and all of the negatives. I should say, I read all the ones that were opposed to sports and all the ones who were supporting it. And the support side was just completely ludicrous. Some of the comments on there were like, well, our kids should have sports because it's good for them, it gives them exercise, and it's safe. Meanwhile, we find out that, football injuries and head injuries can show up much later in life. It's not a safe thing, it's a dangerous thing. You're taking a chance. So the people that are playing the sports, those aren't the ones that I have a problem with. It's the people who sit on their asses and watch it on TV and complain about the other players and what they're doing right and wrong. I had one guy on there who was actually opposed to the sports idea. He said, I love sports. And if a person's watching a game, that's a little different than playing a game. It's still lazy in a sense, but it's entertainment. The problem is when people spend their time worrying about scoreboards, trying to figure out which teams are going to play, and they spend hours and hours arguing about who's fit for what position. And these are people who, their life is about sports. And I'm not one to say, hey, you shouldn't be spending your life interested in sports. If you are into that, that's your thing. But I'm saying that our college money, school money, should not be wasted on sports. There have been a lot of complaints in the last decade or so about how the schools are reducing the money that they put into their sports programs. And a lot of parents are up in arms about it, saying, hey, this isn't right. They're taking away the things that, make our kids, give them exercise and a sense of teamwork. And to a degree, I can see that. But what's happening is that the parents are feeling like they're more forced to pay for it. They can't afford it anymore because they're the ones that have to buy the cleats, they have to buy the uniforms and everything, and they're complaining because they believe that the school should be funding this. And I completely disagree. I do not want my tax money going into schools so it can be used for sports programs, and I think that many people would agree with that. But ultimately, it's obviously very, a touchy subject for a lot of people because there are a lot of sports fans in this country. If you really look at the fall of Rome and what happened right before the fall of Rome, sports became a huge priority to them. They spent exorbitant amounts of money on their various sporting events, and it's almost as if people want to distract themselves when everything else is wrong, when everything else is falling apart. You're going to drive down a highway full of potholes, passing over several water lines that are in disrepair, need to be fixed, so you can get to a place where they just built a new $50 billion stadium for a one-time Olympics. We as humans have our priorities completely ass backwards when it comes to these things, so I guess, I did write this one down. This one comment that somebody said when he was supporting sports in schools. He says, it gives a chance to be famous for kids who aren't good in school or aren't good at academics. And that kind of mentality, I think, goes against what we're learning about ourselves. Is it really about being famous, or is it just about being educated and being a good citizen? When did fame become a benefit? Being famous does not mean that you're a great person. Being famous does not mean that you are successful. Being famous just means that people know who you are. I mean, look at Kardashian. What has that dumb bitch ever done? She's done nothing. She's done nothing. She just acted like a complete idiot and therefore was on TV. And a lot of people who are famous for these same reasons. They're famous for being famous. The problem with sports is that many of the people who are recognized and that are promoted as these great players aren't as good as some of the lesser players which aren't recognized. Many of the kids who are really good at the games that they're playing are marginalized because of various, let's just say that there are issues with the decisions of the schools, or who has money, who has a family that can support and pay for these things. Yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot I can say about it. I just found that story disturbing, and the fact that this guy worked for 50 years and then they took a quarter of his money, and they're taking a guy worked for 10 full years, and they're just going to take the money and buy a scoreboard, a video scoreboard. Priorities are ass backwards, but it's up to us to change it. So take care.